What the hell is even grunge, and did it kill the movement of metal? In the early 1990s, a music scene emerged in Seattle that would change the course of rock music and music as a whole forever: grunge music. Grunge was a reaction against the polished commercial music of the 1980s, and it was characterized by its raw, unpolished sound and its emphasis on authenticity and emotion. Bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and Alice in Chains became household names. Even with grunge taking off in popularity, it still had its critics, and some even saying it killed the momentum of other genres along the way. In this video, we'll take a closer look at the rise of grunge, how grunge music influenced the music industry, as well as how the legacy of Layne Staley and Kurt Cobain live on to this day. My name is Cadillac Michael with Crossing Aces Media. Thank you guys so much for helping me pass 100 subscribers. It does mean a whole lot seeing how this is a brand new channel. But as always, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. But with that, let's go on and keep diving deep into what made grunge music so special, beginning with Seattle. Seattle in the late 1980s was a city in transition. Its economy was shifting away from manufacturing and towards technology, and its music scene undergoing a similar transformation. While the city had a thriving punk rock scene in the 1980s, with bands like Mudhoney or The Farts, many of its bands struggled to gain mainstream success. This all changed in the early 1990s with the emergence of grunge music. And many of the bands that came to define grunge had their roots already in Seattle's underground music scene. Nirvana, for example, was formed in 1987 by singer and guitarist Kurt Cobain and bassist Chris Novoselic, and they quickly became a staple of the city's music scene. And even with other bands emerging from Washington's music scene at the time, like Soundgarden, for example, being formed before Nirvana, or even Pearl Jam releasing their 10 album a year before Nirvana's cultural changing Nevermind album, it was Kurt and Nirvana that helped to define the sound of grunge with their heavy, guitar-driven music and introspective lyrics, and helped push the new style of music forward. Another influential band in the grunge movement at the time was Alice in Chains. Their music was defined by its dark, brooding intensity, and its lyrics dealt with themes of addiction, depression, and alienation, much like Nirvana. And look at that sad-ass town. Look how depressing Seattle is. Are you starting to see the theme? All these bands coming up singing about how sad it is and depressing it is. You live your life in Seattle, and you tell me that's not the kind of music you want to write. Another one of the key factors that contributed to the rise of grunge was the support of independent record labels like Sub Pop, which was based in Seattle, and these labels helped promote and distribute the music of local bands, and they played a critical role in bringing grunge to a wider audience. And with that, Seattle had become known as the epicenter of this new musical movement, and by the early 1990s, grunge had become a global phenomenon. You had people modeling their looks after the icons of the popular grunge bands, and taking over the music world as well, with grunge being played all over the radio, and Nirvana and Alice in Chains performing what is considered by most to be the two greatest MTV Unplugged sessions ever recorded. But in a new wave of innovators, you also have a wave of imitators, with many of the hair bands and glam bands of the 80s ditching their hair and makeup to give a much more realistic look. Most notably, Kiss ditching their whole outfit and makeup to go grunge styled for a little bit. With Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses also putting out some of their own grunge albums to no commercial success. And it's safe to say that this type of music you couldn't replicate. You either lived it or you didn't live it. And while grunge music was celebrated by many, it was also criticized by some for what they saw as its rejection of a more polished and technically proficient music of the past.
I can actually play a lot of these songs on a real guitar. You want me to teach you boys how?
In particular, many metal fans saw grunge as a threat to their beloved genre, and they accused grunge musicians of being untalented and lacking in musical skills. And all this tension between grunge and metal reached a boiling point in the early 1990s, with many metal fans accusing grunge of killing metal. Some even went as far as to say grunge was a conspiracy by the musical industry to undermine metal and replace it with a more commercially viable alternative. Which makes no sense, by the way, because grunge was supposed to be the rebel act against the polished sound of the 80s with the hair bands. And also, with that point being said, as it was in 2010s for teenagers to make fun of Justin Bieber, it was no different in the 90s for metalheads to make fun of Kurt Cobain the exact same way. It was the trending thing to shit on Cobain and to make fun of him. And metal fans were determined not to like grunge, even with the face of metal, Metallica showing up to support their friends Alice in Chains, and the previously mentioned Unplugged recordings. It was nice to see the respect from artist to artist, even when the fans of theirs thought bands like this would be the downfall of their beloved genre. It goes to show Metallica recognized real talent, and it shows a lot of them and their egos that they didn't care that they might get pushed aside for this new movement of music. Which is why, also fun fact, the bass guitar at the recording showing friends don't let friends cut their hair, which was a nice little subtle nod to Metallica chopping off all their hair at the time. And while the claims that these metal fans were largely unfounded, they did reflect a broader cultural shift that was taking place in the music industry at the time. And despite the criticisms leveled against it, despite metalheads not liking it, grunge music continued to gain popularity throughout the early 1990s. And today, grunge is remembered as a defining moment in the history of rock music. And while the popularity of grunge eventually faded, its impact on the musical industry was profound, and its legacy continues to be felt today. So to answer the million-dollar question, did grunge kill metal? Short answer is no, it did not kill metal. Long answer is it killed certain subgenres of metal, like hair metal, glam metal, that kind of stuff. With death comes new life. Because while it might have killed other subgenres of metal and rock, it also paved the way for new genres, like indie rock and emo. It also paved the way for a new generation of musicians who are unafraid to experiment. And one of the most influential figures of the grunge movement was Kurt Cobain. Cobain's music and his lyrics spoke to a generation who are searching for meaning and purpose in a rapidly changing world. And Cobain's tragic death in 1994 only served to cement his status as a cultural icon, and his legacy continued to inspire musicians into the next generation. With Dave Grohl most notably moving on to form the Foo Fighters, and bands like Linkin Park being inspired to create music thanks to Cobain. Another influential figure of the grunge movement was Layne Staley, and his untimely death in 2002 was a devastating loss to the music world. But his influence continues to be felt in the work of countless musicians who have been inspired by his music, like Matt Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold, incorporating his vocal style in part to Layne. Or Godsmack, who named their band after an Alice in Chains song, and if you slow down and listen to their music, sound a lot like Alice in Chains. And while we're almost 30 years after the heyday of grunge, the influence will continue to be felt throughout countless generations of new musicians going forward. And honestly, I look forward to hearing new music inspired by the old music of yesterday. Well, there we have it. We made it to the end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have not already, gone and hit that subscribe button down below. We try to upload once a week here at Crossing Aces Media, whether it be vinyl reviews, music documentaries like this, or festival coverage. We try to bring you a little bit of different things. So make sure you hit that subscribe button down below to stay updated on future uploads. But with that, I'm Cadillac Mike with Crossing Aces Media, and I hope you guys have a great day. Peace.